Hello and welcome to Nithrania YouTube channel. My name is Branislav Berec and in this video I'm going to preview the game called Ascendancy, which is currently on Kickstarter. It's already funded and there are only a few days left. I have received the prototype just recently, so everything you're about to see in this video are prototype components, although the components you are about to see are a prototype of the deluxe components you can find in the Kickstarter version of the game. This is not going to be a full rules teach, just an overview of the game mechanics. And at the end of the video, since this video is not sponsored, I'll give you my thoughts and ideas about the game as well. So let's get started. Ascendancy is the name of the game and also the name of the world in which the game takes place. And the main idea behind the game was to have something with the vibe of the classic PC 4X strategy games from late 90s, early 2000s. Each player represents a powerful leader of the chosen house, and over the course of the game you will develop your house, your empire. You will anoint powerful champions, but you can also hire mercenaries and war machines, and you will fight against the creatures when attempting to grow your empire. Currently the game comes with 9 scenarios, and almost all the scenarios can be played as a solo game, or you can have up to 4 human players in the game, and very often you will have to play against Nemesis player, an AI player, so the game controlled character. And if you don't have 4 human players, you can also replace all of them or some of them with AI players, again with game controlled players. In addition, some scenarios are cooperative, others are competitive, and in the competitive scenarios each player can play on their own, or if you have 4 players in the game, including the AI players, you can play in teams, 2 versus 2, and even here you can play with open teams, so it is clear which players are together, or you can play with hidden roles, which means each player will get a card with their role, so you don't know who your teammate is, but you can find that out during the game. Then there are different types of objectives in each scenario. In some scenarios, the player or players or the team with the highest number of victory points wins the game. These victory points are called the loyalty points. In others, you have to defeat the Nemesis player or build a settlement in the middle of the game board. And you can play these scenarios as a campaign, or you can basically jump to any scenario and play it as a standalone scenario. Now, let me briefly introduce the components of the game. Here we have the map. The map contains these hexagonal map tiles. Each tile represents a region, and there are 5 different regions, 5 different types of regions in the game. And each region has a name and certain number of victory points or the loyalty points you gain when you build a settlement in that region. Settlements are represented by these minis. This is an upgraded settlement, and this is a 3rd level of the settlement. So that's a fully upgraded settlement. These small tiles are bonus tiles, normal, magic, which are level 2, and the rare level 3 bonus tiles. You get these when you scout that region or when you move over to that region. Then here we have the tracker board. The first track is the round track. This is the current round, and this is the final round of the game. Usually scenarios don't have the fixed number of rounds. You can decide how long your game will be. The introductory game can be as short as 3 rounds, but you can play a game with as long as 9 or even more rounds. I would say that the standard length of the game would be somewhere between 5 or 7 rounds. This is, based on the reference guide, somewhere between 1 or 2 hours per player. So in a 3-player game, this could be easily a 6 hours game. If your group is experienced with these kind of games, the 6 or 7 rounds of the game can be played in 3 hours. By the way, these rounds are called decades in this game. Then this is the victory points track or the loyalty points track, and here we have 3 traits. This is cunning, this is called might, and this one is intellect. Every player in the game, every character, including the AI characters, have their stats here. And if you have an AI player in the game which you have to defeat, that boss also has the stats. These are standard stats and this is a hard difficulty. And the numbers here indicate the starting values for those 3 traits. Then this is your own player board, the house board. Here you have your workers. There are 5 tiers. Tier 1 are outcasts, Tier 2 laborers, Tier 3 loyalists, and Tier 4 lords. And you can also upgrade your workers to Tier 5, which are royal advisors. You don't have royal advisors at the start of the game. Then here you have 3 types of buildings you can build and upgrade. The higher the tier, the more tech trees under each stack of cards you uncover. And if you have these small cubes, these are resources, we'll come to that later. You can use those resources to hire your champions or activate or enable your special abilities, or you can even hire more workers. And this is your empire. You increase the level of your empire as you win combat, and with that you also gain access to other special abilities and also powerful options in another tech tree. Then this is the quest, Ascendancy quest. If you fulfill that quest, you gain some sort of a reward. And these are items, they're called consumable items, very powerful items which are very much helpful in the combat. We'll come to those later as well. You may also have these horses which help you with movement or journey action in the game. Then you have some coins in your reserve, resource cubes, and these are loot tokens. When you gain a loot token, you don't automatically reveal it. You have to use an action for that, so these are not revealed token yet, and these are revealed where you have the special bonus. Then up here on the right side of your house board, you have creatures you would have to fight in the next combat. On the left side, there's your champion or mercenary or war machine. These 2 cards are in the front row. It's also stated here with a very, very small font. So this is the front row. You can imagine as a side view of the combat field. So these 2 units are in the front row. These are in the back rows. And these champions and other combat units are in your reserve. They're not deployed to the combat. We'll come to the combat later. As I said, the game is played over a certain number of rounds or decades, and each decade has the 4 distinct phases. Those 4 phases are played on these game boards. The first phase is called the frontier phase. Here you would place your workers to take actions thematically somewhere at the frontier of your empire. So you can scout here, you can reveal creatures which you have to defeat in order to expand your empire. You can gain some valuable items, and you can also build in this phase and use the special building here. Then in the next phase, the supply phase, you will buy or acquire resources. We'll get to that in a minute. Then the third phase is the academy phase. Here you can hire mercenaries or war machines. You can gain an Ascendancy quest. And you can also gain 2 special resources. One of them is called the Mana Stone, which is needed to activate some special powers and special abilities. And the other one is Influence, that is also needed to develop your workers. Then finally the 4th phase is the Empire phase. And in this one, you will expand your empire, so you will have a chance to conquer or siege, journey to other hexes, or upgrade your existing settlements. Now, let's take a look at 1 round, 1 decade of the game. First, if you have any Nemesis players, the enemy Nemesis players, that player is the first player to place all these workers on these game boards using the die of the same color. So what you do, you roll the die, and based on the numbers are here. Based on that number, you place a worker in the corresponding action space. Then if you have other Nemesis players, and those could be Nemesis players which are even on your side, they use the same system. Based on the die values, they place the workers in the corresponding game boards. Then come the human players. Based on the current victory points, the player with the lowest number of victory points goes first, the player with the highest number of victory points goes last. And in this player order, players place their workers in empty spaces for the corresponding phase. So they resolve the phase 1 first, then phase 2, phase 3, and so on. Now, your outcasts as tier 1 workers can only be placed in the tier 1 game board. So that's this frontier phase, so you can only use outcasts here. Your laborers can be used in the game board with level 2 or tier 2, but also tier 1. The same applies to loyalists, they can be used in the tier 3 or as the tier 2 or tier 1 workers, which means if you really want, you can take a loyalist and place that loyalist in any empty space, or you can oust a worker of the lower tier. That worker comes back to that player, or if it's a nemesis player, it's simply placed next to the board and it will not take any action this round. And then you can place your worker, higher tier worker, in that action space. However, your number of workers is limited, so when you use a higher tier worker during a lower tier phase, you will not be able to use that worker in the corresponding phase later in that round. During the game you will actually try to do the opposite. You will try to upgrade your lower tier workers to a higher tier so that you can use more workers during the higher tier phases. So, once everyone places all their workers in the tier 1 phase, the frontier phase, or everyone passes, then these action spaces are resolved in the reverse order based on this initiative number 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So this action is executed or resolved first, then this action space, then this one, and so on back to the first one. Once resolved, players proceed to the second phase, the supply phase, which is performed in the exact same way, then the third phase, fourth phase, and then the round is over. At the end of the round, there is the end of the decade procedure, which I will cover later in the video. But now let me briefly explain all these actions you can do in the game. With these reveal actions, you reveal the next card from these stacks. This is a level 2 creature, level 1 creature. When you reveal that, you take the card and you place it on top of your house board, either to the front row if that row is occupied, then to the back row. And the reason why this is a good thing to do is that you can see the type of those creatures. The game uses a standard rock, paper, scissors mechanics. Basically, heroes or creatures with this intellect type are more powerful than the creatures or heroes with the might type. Might heroes and creatures are stronger than these cunning types. However, the cunning type is stronger than the intellect type. So when you reveal a creature, you can see the type of that creature, and based on that type, here it's cunning, you know which type of the hero you will need to defeat that creature. So in this case, this chieftain, the might hero, will be the better match for this creature than the current hunter. Therefore, when you reveal the creatures, you know what to prepare for and you can better plan your development. Then with the scout location action, you can reveal new tiles on the map. With this one, you take one consumable item. These are very powerful items during the game. Then there's this build action and the patron action. You can do build in the first 3 phases, first, second, and third. There's no build action in the 4th phase. And with the patron, you can use the building over here or the standard building, which is available to all players. These buildings here are placed with the build action. When you perform the build in the first phase, you build the building from this leftmost column. When you perform the build in the second phase, you build the second building and so on. And in the 4th phase, you don't do build, but when you conquer, when you do the combat, you improve your empire. When you build, you have to pay the cost. You have to fulfill the requirements here. You have to have a certain value or certain level of your character attribute. For example, here you need at least 3 might. And then you have to pay some resources. Then you gain victory points and you place that building in a corresponding game board. That building is available to all players. If other players use that building, they have to pay you a certain number of coins based on the tier of that building. And when you build a building, you always move it 1 row up and you uncover this stack tree. When you do, and when you have the corresponding resource cubes available, you can use them immediately. These special abilities here are in this stack of cards. You can find the corresponding card and place it in your tableau, and that ability is available to you for the rest of the game. As I said, thematically this frontier phase takes place on the outskirts of your empire, so therefore you scout the nearby locations and you reveal the creatures you need to defeat in order to expand your empire. Then in the second phase, the supply phase, you will gather these resources. We have food, ore, which is needed to build buildings. Then you have skill and knowledge. These skill and knowledge resources are used to increase your skills, the level of your skills, or with knowledge you unlock the special abilities of your house. Then again, you can also build here, and with Patron you can invest 1 coin and get 3 coins because it's very difficult in this game to gain some money. And in addition to gaining these resources with your action, you may always sell or buy these resources at any time during the game as an instant action. And an interesting feature of this game is that when you acquire or buy the resources, you take them from the top row and place them in your personal reserve. When you sell them, you actually return them back to the row, but when you use them, when you spend resources, they go into this discard tray and they are permanently lost for the remaining of the game. So as the game progresses, the number of available resources shrinks, and that's why they become more expensive to buy, but you can also sell them for a higher amount of money. Then the third phase is this academy phase. Here you can gain a powerful influence resource. With this one you can upgrade or develop your workers. So for example, you can gain more workers, or with this one you can upgrade the workers to a higher tier and so on. And you can also develop your champions with this one. When you spend a skill resource, you can actually take your hero and flip it to the other side, which is more powerful. And that means your hero, your champion, has been developed. You see the higher hit points and more powerful abilities. Talking about the special resources, here we have another one called the Mana Stone. You can take this resource with this action, or you can buy it anytime by paying the knowledge and ore, and the same applies to influence. You can buy it with knowledge and skill. So when you acquire a Mana Stone, you take one of these white cubes and you place it in this area, in the corresponding column, in this area, and this means that the Mana Stone is charged. When you use that Mana Stone, it is not spent as other resources, it is discharged and is placed in the second row, and you use the Mana Stone to activate some special abilities. For example, here you need the Mana Stone to use this powerful ultimate ability of the champion. You may also need the Mana Stone to build or activate your magical buildings. And at the end of the decade, your discharged Mana Stones are automatically recharged, and you can use them again in the next round. Then in this academy phase we also have these Ascendancy quests. These are very powerful abilities. Once you fulfill that quest, you can gain special benefits. And here you can buy you can hire mercenaries or war machines, or you can buy them at any time for 4 coins. In this trade we also have these tokens. These are traits, and these are placed usually on the champions and creatures, also on mercenaries, and each token has some special effect. This one, for example, says pacified, which means this unit cannot attack, and it also says always, which means this is a permanent effect which is only removed by special action. Some effects are only active until the next certain type of event or trigger, or maybe the next action, and so on. It's all printed on those tokens. By the way, the Nemesis players don't resolve these abilities, don't resolve these actions, or to be more precise, when they resolve actions with cards, they usually discard the top card of the deck. When they resolve these supply cubes, they discard the first available cube, which simulates that they gain that resource and then they spend it, but they don't resolve any build action, patron action, or anything else. What they do resolve are these actions during the Empire phase, and what they do is determined by the value of the corresponding die. Here we have number 1, and based on this small table you can easily see what the AI player is going to do. This is the current location of that player, and this is the relative direction in which that AI player is going to move or take some action. There are 3 options here. If that character is going to move to a hex where there already is the settlement of the same player, it will upgrade it. If that character would move to an empty hex, it would discard this loot token, place a new map tile here from this draw deck, and automatically move to that hex and settle it. So place the settlement tile, settlement token on that hex. Then, if the die value would be, for example, 3, that means the character would have to move off the map. It actually changes the value to the opposite direction, so it would change 3 to 6, and the character would move to the empty hex, discard the loot token, place a new map tile and settle that tile. And if that character would be adjacent to a settlement of a human player or any other player, and it would move to that location, it would initiate a combat. So those 3 options are here. They can either conquer or siege, or journey, which is moving to an empty hex and then doing the settle action immediately, or upgrading their settlements. Since these AI players are AI players, some of their actions are not resolved at all in these game boards, then these ones are therefore more powerful. When it comes to human players, when they upgrade the settlement, you can upgrade the tier 1 to tier 2 using these components here. So this is a tier 1 settlement, this is tier 2 with this upgraded component. It is obviously more difficult to conquer or siege, and this is a level 3 settlement. Then with the journey action you simply move from one location to the adjacent location, and in order to create a settlement you actually have to take the settle action, which is an instant action. And then with conquer or siege, you can either siege the adjacent settlement of another player, or if you are in a location when there is no settlement, you can conquer that region by defeating creatures in your tableau based on the level of your empire. We'll get to that combat in just a minute. These actions are also taken in the initiative order from 3, 2, then 1. So players first upgrade their settlements, then they can journey, and then they can conquer or siege. So if you have more than one character here, more than one worker, you can journey and do the conquer and siege during the same decade, during the same round. With that, with the 4th phase, the round is finished. Then at the end of the decade, based on your current number of victory points or loyalty points, you gain some money. Then you have to pay the money based on the current round number, which means you can either make some money or you can lose the money if you are low on victory points. Then you resolve the law or an event, which is in this area of this 4th game board, the Empire phase. That may differ when you play a competitive game or a cooperative game, and when you resolve it, you can draw the new one and choose to replace the existing one. Then on your location, you can perform the skill check, which is rolling the die, and based on the current values, you may gain the benefits shown on the corresponding tile. And this skill check is based on the symbol here. So in addition to rolling a die, you also add the corresponding level of your skill. Then you take all the workers from these game boards back to your house board, and the decade is over. Now let's briefly cover the combat. When you combat, you can have maximum 3 combat units in your tableau, in your war zone, and you can only have maximum 1 champion, 1 mercenary and 1 war machine. When you upgrade this empire, you may actually be able to deploy the 2nd champion, so you may have 2 champions and one mercenary or one war machine based on what type of siege or what type of combat you have. By default, you can only combat against creatures or the nemesis player. You may never combat another player directly. However, you may conquer their settlements, but most of the time you will be combating these creatures. First, if you have any creatures already revealed, then you combat these creatures. If you don't have any revealed, then you reveal the new one, but in that case, you don't know what kind of type of the creature you will face, which means you don't really have a chance to deploy the corresponding proper useful champion. But if you have those creatures revealed, you can better prepare for the battle. Now, the combat is actually very simple. Each unit will take one turn during one round of the combat, and the order is determined by this number, which is the initiative of these combat units. The combat unit with the highest number goes first. Here we have 5, then the combat units with the lower number, and finally the combat units with the lowest numbers go last. If you have 2 combat units with the same initiative number, you choose in which order they are triggered. If there are both defending and the attacking units with the same initiative, then the defending units have the priority. So it's always better to defend, because you will have a chance to act first if you have the same initiative value. So, based on the initiative value, each combat unit will perform its actions. Your champion has certain stamina level. You start with this token which indicates what is your starting stamina. It's never full stamina. And then here you have your options, your actions available. You spend that number of your stamina points and perform the attack or the action. Here you have attacks, which is something what you do on your turn or during the turn of that creature or of that character. And here we have tactics, which you can do anytime during the combat. Now, after you attack, you always attack the creature which is in the front row. So this is the front row for the creatures. This is the front row of your own units, which means the creatures will attack this unit and you will also always attack the unit in this space. After you attack, this creature will roll for the defense. After you roll the number, you check this table and apply the corresponding effect. The effect may be that the creature will take more damage or less damage or do some kind of a special effect, and you take the attack, adjust by the defensive or resist action, and if you apply any damage, place these damage markers on that creature. If you inflict enough damage, that creature will be defeated. You don't have to spend all your stamina points. If you still have some available, you can continue taking actions. If you don't want to use more stamina points, you may keep that stamina, and this is the number which will automatically recover for the next round. So during the next combat round, this would go to the highest level, and that would allow you to take more powerful actions. Then, when it's the time for a creature to attack, again, the creature will use the die. You can use these dice. This one is the attack die. This one is the defense die. The creature will use the attack die, and based on the value, it will inflict some or try to inflict some damage. Then you roll the defense die for the creature or for the champion or the mercenary in the front row. And again, you compare the attack value with the defense value and apply the damage. Then you continue like this with every single combat unit during the round. And after the round, if any of those creatures are defeated, they are eliminated. If you defeat enough creatures, you don't have to defeat all of them, but based on this value, sometimes you only need to defeat 1 creature of level 1 or 2 creatures of level 1 or 1 creature of level 2. So you don't have to defeat all of them. If you fulfill the requirements on the current empire card, you win the combat and you advance your empire. If your combat units are defeated, they are placed face down in your tableau. When you place them face down, they have the activation cost So the next time, for the next battle, you can pay the activation cost and redeploy them back to the war zone. Your champions will also be moved to your area here from the war zone, and they will never die, but they will have to be healed using the actions in the game to put them back into the combat. At the end of the combat round, you have a chance to retreat from the battle. And the interesting thing is that these damage tokens, these damage markers, will stay on that creature. So the next time you perform the conquer action, it will remain damaged, and it will be easier for you to kill that, to eliminate that creature. If you decide to attack the fortifications of other players, that player will automatically take the fortification card from the supply. And basically that's going to be the card in the front row. This fortification has higher number of hit points, and it's very difficult to destroy. So you have to be very well prepared. Now, in order to defeat these fortifications or more powerful creatures, you have to use these special items, special abilities, because they give you one-time benefits. Once you use them, you flip them face down and they're used, but they can give you very, very, very powerful benefits which may help you win those combat situations. And finally, when you have a combat against the Nemesis player, the enemy player, you use this Nemesis tile, Nemesis board. You use the other side, which shows the attack value and the defense value, and the initiative value and the abilities, the attack and the defense abilities for that particular Nemesis. The number of hit points is determined based on the current number of victory points of that particular Nemesis player, and also based on the number of players in the game. Usually in cooperative situations, multiple players can be in the combat with the Nemesis player, with the Nemesis creature. So players combine their power to defeat it. So that's the end of one decade. Then you move to the next decade and repeat the same procedure. You redeploy the workers to these phases, take those actions, reveal more creatures, gain more resources, hire some mercenaries, gain some influence or mana stones, and then journey, siege, conquer, upgrade settlements, and so on. As you build more settlements, you score more and more victory points. You also score victory points for upgrading your settlements. You also score victory points for building buildings and improving your empire. You may also score victory points from your special abilities, from completing these Ascendancy quests. And if the game objective is not to have the most victory points, but to defeat a specific Nemesis player or achieve other objective, make sure you develop your empire as best as possible. And at the end of the last decade, either the player or the team with the highest number of victory points wins the game, or the player or the team which completes the objective of the scenario wins the game. So that's Ascendancy in a nutshell. As I said, this is not going to be a full rules teach, rather the overview of the entire game, the game mechanics. And as I also said, the main idea behind the game was to create a game with the vibe of classic 2000s, early 2000s or late 90s PC 4X strategy game. And I have to say this game gives me that vibe, gives me that feeling. My personal most favorite PC game of all time is Heroes of Might and Magic 3. And this game is very close to that PC version. I mean, it looks different, obviously. The graphics is different. You don't have the spells and abilities that are in the Heroes game. However, from the gameplay perspective, from the feelings, this is the closest implementation, board game implementation of Heroes of Might and Magic 3. And I played other implementations of this game, or the games that try to resemble Heroes game. This one is the closest one, because I developed my house. I can have several heroes, depending on which area of my house board I develop. I can have heroes that are good for against one type of creatures, or I can have heroes that are good against other types of heroes. I can even hire the foreign heroes if I develop my empire well enough. And when building these various houses in the 3 different columns, actually the 4 different columns, that gives me the feeling of building and upgrading buildings in Heroes, in the PC version of the game. I can upgrade the building several times. I can upgrade my workers several times. As I upgrade my buildings, I get access to special abilities. And again, I upgraded those special abilities. So almost everything in this game can be upgraded. And I have a feeling like I do a lot, even though the game takes only like 5 or 6 rounds, which is a standard length of the game. I feel like I accomplish a lot of things in this game. Unlike in other games where those games are very long, but I feel like the game is very slow and I don't do much during my turn. Here, I can do a lot. Those 4 areas, 4 phases of the game. I can explore the land, I can explore and reveal the creatures that I need to defeat in order to expand my empire. I can get resources. I can develop my magical abilities and my magic buildings, get some mana, and then I can I can journey, I can conquer the lands, I can combat the creatures or even the Nemesis player. I can upgrade my settlements. So that's another thing which can be upgraded. And that's all happening during the same round, the same decade. So I really have a feeling that I accomplish a lot in this game, even though I only play, let's say, 5 or 6 rounds. Now, upgrading all these elements in the game really feels well, because with every single upgrade you get more powerful abilities and you feel like you are developing your empire, your house, your castle, your fortress, your heroes. You can even upgrade your heroes. And in order to defeat higher tier creatures and to develop your empire even more and more, you have to get prepared. You can only have, again, similar to Heroes game, you can have your hero, you can have your small army like a mercenary, you can also have the war machine. If you upgrade enough, you can also have 2 heroes in your small army, and this small army is going to combat another army or creatures. And the question is, how do you prepare? Because you can only have 3 combat units at most in every single combat. You have to get those consumable items. Those can be very, very powerful. If you want to fire up some of the very powerful abilities, you have to have mana. So you have to develop your heroes or your house board also in this magical way. This gives me another idea. I come to another thought that you don't have to always do the same thing in this game. You can go in different directions. You can gain victory points by conquering the lands and really expanding your empire. Every single hex you conquer gives you some victory points. It has some modifications, so with the wise choice of hexes you choose and you explore, you can increase the number of victory points or loyalty points from every single hex you conquer and where you place your settlement. On the other hand, you can also decrease the number of victory points that your opponents gain from conquering lands. But that's not the only way you can do it, because if you conquer, you have to prepare for the battle. You have to have your hero, you have to have at least a mercenary. Ideally, you want to develop and you want to have another hero. You need to have these consumable items. After the battle, you may lose the battle. In my first game, I had my hero, I had the mercenary, and even the war machine, and I was against some kind of octopus creature. And that octopus did 1 hit, and it was a powerful hit because you can imagine that with those hands, it hit every single combat unit in my army. And although it was not a big hit, it actually killed everyone. I mean, you cannot get killed. Your heroes, your mercenaries, they are not killed in this game. They are just defeated. And at the end of the battle, or after the battle, during next rounds, you can heal your hero. You can redeploy your mercenaries and war machines. So you never lose them, but they can be defeated. So I got defeated by just 1 hit of the creature. Then this slows you down, then you have to spend another action to heal yourself. Redeploy is an instant action, but it slows you down. So you can gain a lot of victory points by conquering lands, but it may be a slow process, but it's very rewarding. On the other hand, you can focus on just building. You don't even have to expand. You can just continue building, again, if you imagine the Heroes game, you can build your own castle, your fortress. You can build buildings, and you still do it on one hex where you start the game. You don't even have to expand. And with building, every single building, you get powerful abilities, you get more victory points, you can even get more victory points through those abilities. So you don't really have to conquer. You can focus on building and upgrading your settlement, your starting location. You can do some occasional exploration, scouting, and you can get some loot tokens. But you don't really have to go the combat way. You can really go with the building way. And if other players come to your location and they build settlements around, if they leave, you can siege their settlements from your location. So you don't have to move to that location, to that hex. You can siege from your own hex. You destroy the settlement, and that's your trophy. So that gives you victory points as well. You get victory points for all the buildings, you get victory points for the abilities, and that's a very viable way and viable strategy how to win the game as well. If you upgrade your settlement, you don't even have to be afraid that other players will come to your location and defeat you, because as you upgrade your settlement, if anyone attacks you, first you have the advantage that you are defending side, and the defending side has the advantage when the initiative values are the same of the combat units. So that's the first advantage. Second advantage is that you get the fortification card, the fortification combat unit. And even the first fortification is already quite powerful. The second one is even more powerful. But in order to defeat you in your upgraded settlement hex, that's very difficult. It's almost impossible. So you better get prepared. And even the nemesis player, the enemy player, if it comes to your location, if you have the upgraded settlement and you defend in the upgraded settlement, you have a very, very high chance of winning and defeating the nemesis player, which gives you another fantastic reward. So these are all viable options how to win the game. You don't really have to go explore and fight all the time. So that's what I like about this game as well. Replayability is huge because there are 9 scenarios. Each scenario has different objectives. You can play competitively, you can play cooperatively, you can play solo. I mean, each player can play on their own, you can play in teams. Having hidden teams is also a lot of fun if you play for victory points. But even if the objective is to defeat a boss, final boss in the game, again, the team with maybe higher victory points wins the game depending on the objective. So even if you play one scenario, you can play it repeatedly. You can develop your empire and your house board in a different way. And by the way, there are 4 houses in the game currently in this race. So each house behaves in a unique way. Each house has unique abilities here, unique heroes. The base structure is the same, but each house is different. So here we have House Rasputin, then another one, the House Roberts, and House Khan. And they, as I said, they all have different abilities. So even the cards and heroes are unique. So the game comes with a lot of cards. If you play the game as a legacy, you also get legacy abilities, legacy items, which are again other cards in the game, which remain with you with your house for the rest of the campaign. Or if you repeat the same scenario, if you want to keep the same house, you can continue with these same legacy items. A lot to like in this game, a lot to explore. I really like this feeling and the vibe the game gives me, and it doesn't even feel that it's a long game. If you love the games like Heroes of Might and Magic, which I do, spending 5 or 6 hours with this game, it feels like 1 hour or 2 hours. The time flies by so quickly that you don't even realize those hours fly by. That's how much fun I have with this game, and I'm really, really happy that I had a chance to look at this prototype of the game. So in a nutshell, that's Ascendancy. I hope you enjoyed the video and I hope you have a good idea what the game is about. I highly recommend making this game. So you've been watching my game preview of Ascendancy. My name is Branislav Berec and hope to see you next time with the next video. I would like to thank everyone who has ever supported the channel and especially the current supporters listed on this page. If you too would like to support the channel in creation of videos like this and other video tutorials and other content on this channel, please visit the patreon.com/Nithrania.